Hey everyone, welcome to another Power Monkey podcast. On today's episode, Chad and I interview Chris Irwin. Chris is the Director of Partnerships for the Navy SEAL Foundation. He's also had quite a few different roles within the fitness and CrossFit community up to this point. He was an affiliate owner with his wife for many years as a CrossFitter himself, and was also the president of Killcliff prior to moving into his current position with the Navy SEAL Foundation. We talk a little bit about what the Navy SEAL Foundation is, what they do as an organization, what projects they have coming up, how they're helping these incredible soldiers when they come back from battle and helping out the families as well. It's an incredible organization. We're really excited to have Chris on board with us for this episode, and we hope you guys appreciate what he has to say. Well, Chris, thanks for taking the time to speak with Chad and I today. How you been doing?
Good. Nice to meet you guys.
Absolutely. Virtual meeting for the first time here. You were mentioning a little earlier before we got on that you're out in Montana. Huh? How's life out there these days?
It's good. It's getting cold. But it's nice. I look at the mountain. We have Big Mountain is the ski mountain in town, and I've got a perfect view right outside my window. And so there's snow that's starting to be on top of it. That's nice to see.
Not a bad thing to be waking up to every morning. That's for sure. So we want to just jump right into one of the things that I know you're passionate about and a big part of is the Navy SEAL Foundation. And I think it would be great if you could give a little bit of background about what the Navy SEAL Foundation is for our listeners, and also a little bit about how you got involved with it.
Sure. So we are a 501c3, so it's a nonprofit. Hopefully that goes without saying a little bit. We're the largest benevolent organization that supports the Naval Special Warfare community. So that's the entire SEAL community, SWIC community, which is the boat guys, Special Warfare Combatant Craft Crewmen, and enablers. So that means, most of the commands out there, the majority of people at it are admin folks and logistics folks, right? People that support the operators. So they all fall into that group as well. So we support all of the active duty that fall in there, all of their families, reservists, veterans, and families of the fallen. If you take all of that together, right, the numbers are kind of always in flux, but it's something like 25 to 30,000 people that probably would fall under our programs, right, would qualify for some of our programs. We've been around for about 20 years. This is actually our 20th anniversary, technically. So it's really, the organization has really grown up and grown since September 11th, right? Really kind of in conjunction with that, where things changed dramatically for everybody, and especially in the Naval Special Warfare community. It started off honestly with one scholarship. And at this point we have an annual operating budget of something like $15 to $20 million that go against 30 programs under 5 pillars of support. I think one of the things that I'm especially proud of, and I say that as someone who's only worked here for a little over 2 years, so I can't take a lot of credit for the growth, but we're an extremely highly rated charity amongst any charity in the United States. So one of the things I say to people that are looking to support a nonprofit is do your homework, like do some research about what that nonprofit does and how well they manage their money. So you can go to a website called Charity Navigator. They're an independent organization that ranks and rates charities on accountability and financial transparency. We've had a 4-star rating for 9 years at this point. We've had a perfect score for 5. And that puts us in about the top 0.6, 0.7%, top 65 or so of the 9,000 or so charities that are ranked in that, or on that site.
That's incredible.
90 on a sort of rolling 3-year trailing average, 95 cents of every dollar we raise goes to our programs or is retained for future mission use. So it's something we're really proud of, is that, we try to run as lean as possible and obviously be as great stewards of the money that we're raising.
Absolutely. That's incredibly impressive. And obviously 20 years and counting now is something to be incredibly proud of. You mentioned some of the programs. Can you touch on some of the challenges that you're seeing with the SEALs coming back from combat, their lives what it's like to actually get back into regular society, and what these programs are actually doing to help kind of facilitate that transition back into everyday life.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned we have 5 pillars of support. So warrior and family support. So that is kind of active duty and families. Educational opportunities. So we have a whole component that's based on scholarships, and that kind of runs the gamut of active duty to spouses, children. We've given out literally thousands of scholarships and grants for education. Tragedy assistance and survivor support. So that is, we have a whole program pillar for Gold Star families. That's for people that are not familiar with that term, Gold Star family. That is families of the fallen, right? So that is, that's parents, that's spouses, that's siblings, that's children, and that's over 500 people that for us inside NSW since 9/11 that fall into that category that we take care of essentially in perpetuity. I mean, we have, I think our Gold Star programs are second to none, really. And I could go head to head with any other organization out there that's doing something like that. Warrior transition, veteran support. So that's kind of what you were talking about there, right? Like guys transitioning, which is a piece of obviously what we do. And then legacy preservation. So we just making sure we never forget, right? That's really important to us. So underneath those 5 pillars, there's 30 or so programs. And these are also things that evolve, right? So the challenges we face now might not be the challenges we have in 10 years. They're certainly not the same now as they were 20 years ago. I could kind of go 100 different directions about those types of things. Some of the things I'll just kind of point out is, generally speaking, we do a great job of sort of filling in the gaps where other organizations can't, right? So if there is an injured service member, or even an injured family member of a service member, right? Or a sick family member of a service member, we have a lot of sort of stipends and programs and way to address those that helps someone either get back to duty or helps alleviate some stress in that person's life. And we do it in places where the government can't, or someone like, their healthcare can't, right? So we will individually assess, like, hey, where does this person need help, whether it's respite childcare, or like a great example right now is with everything with coronavirus, right? Like, talk about if you have someone who's a spouse who's deployed and you're home with your kids, and now you've got all the coronavirus stuff going on, right? Now you got to be a teacher as well. I don't know about you guys, but I've seen this in my own house,
absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
And so, or like, let's say that person is a first responder or an essential worker, right? And so they've got that added stress on top of them. So we created a whole program called the Family Assistance Program to support those people and basically provide a person who can come to their house and help with virtual learning, or help with chores around the house, or get groceries, right? Wow. That kind of thing. So we really try to be adaptive to what the changing needs are of the community.
Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, I love that you guys are reaching out and really thinking deeply and helping the families. That's amazing. And I can't even imagine how it makes the families feel to have that support behind them. And I watched a few videos on the foundation and on the Chad workout and stuff like that we're going to talk about later on as well. And just incredible stuff. And I think we do have a little bit more to talk about with, or a few more questions on the foundation as well. But I want to step back for a second and just see, I'm always curious as to why people do what they do, the psychology and the purpose behind it. And aside from being a SEAL yourself, what led you to this position and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, so it's an interesting story, I think, at least I hope. I got off active duty in 2011, and I found myself eventually, after a lot of soul searching, trying to figure out what I was going to do, which I really didn't know. I mean, I really had no idea what I was going to do professionally. I ended up down in St. Thomas. I was working for, I'd gotten a job, but then kind of alongside of that, we were CrossFitters. My wife and I were CrossFitters, and
Mm-hmm.
we were just kind of doing our thing. And people kind of started joining us in various ways, to the point where we had like all these people at our house working out with us, because it was like sort of new on the island of St. Thomas. There was no CrossFit there.
Right.
And so I just was like, hey, you should affiliate, right? So my wife started a gym. So obviously I helped her, but we started the first CrossFit gym in the Virgin Islands because of that, and eventually got a space and built. We had this amazing community. Anyway, that kind of eventually led to me. That was kind of the interim. But then eventually, the job that I had didn't work out. It was a big learning experience for me, in the sense that, I realized, like, hey, I'm not very good at this. Like I'm not just going to go into a job and be awesome at it. Like, right. I might really suck at it. And that was the case. Like, I really realized I wasn't good at that job, and it wasn't going to work out. And it was like, it was a humbling experience for me. Right. But in the interim there, I'd gotten linked up with a guy named Todd Ehrlich, who had founded a company called Killcliff, which is pretty well known in the CrossFit community. I had never heard of it. Didn't know him. He was a SEAL as well, former SEAL. And so it's a long story how we got linked up. It's not really that important. But anyway, we were talking, and eventually he was like, hey, why don't you come work for us? He kind of wanted another guy that was from the community to help do some of the sort of military liaison stuff, and just kind of be, I think, a little bit of a AOIC, assistant kind of to him being the CEO. And so he eventually hired me as the president, and I knew nothing about running a business, right? Or beverages or anything like that.
Right.
Nothing. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I can remember being on these calls with people I'd never even met, because I'm down in the Virgin Islands and they're in Atlanta. And I'm trying to like lead these people. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are. I don't know anything about this industry. But Todd really believed in me. But one of the big things that drew me, and this is a long-winded answer here. One of the things that really drew me to that company, other than it being just cool, I thought it was a cool brand and a cool idea, was that his mission with the company was to be the largest contributor to the Navy SEAL Foundation. That's what he wanted to do with that organization. And I had just never considered something like that. I had never thought, hey, you can start a company with a purpose behind it. That's like a for-profit company that's got a nonprofit mission, right? And I didn't know anything about business, but that idea I thought was really cool. It was like, wow, we can be really successful and at the same time raise a ton of money for the community and do something great, right? And hopefully do it in a really honorable way too, which I think is always so critical. So I really adopted his passion in that regard. I don't take credit for that, in the sense that it wasn't my idea, but I don't know. So I was there for 5 years, and I just saw how that mission and that purpose fostered such a sense of excitement inside the company, right? Even people that had no time in the military was having a purpose beyond just like, hey, we're going to make a lot of money or whatever, sell a lot of drinks, inspired people. And so when I left there in 2018, I don't know, we at some point we had actually become an official partner with the foundation. So we were lucky enough to go from just supporting to becoming the first official partner with the foundation, which they had never done before. And that relationship, was so good, I think, that luckily they offered me a job after leaving Killcliff. So I went from like managing the relationship on the Killcliff side to the now as director of partnerships, doing it on the foundation side, right? So I don't know. I mean, I just think it's nice to wake up every day and think that what you're doing is actually helping people in some way, right? Like you're actually doing some good in the world. I hope that's true, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. And it certainly seems like a great fit for you, being a former SEAL yourself and everything else, and then working with Killcliff and developing those types of partnerships. And I assume that you're also working to develop other partnerships similar to that. So what are you guys doing in that regard?
Yeah. So when I came in, the job that I was kind of hired for was slightly different, actually. It was still on the development side. So we have kind of essentially two sides of the organization. You have development, which is fundraising, then you have programs, which is sort of how you're then utilizing that money, right? The money you raise. So I came in on the development side, and the original job description is a little bit different, but I just saw this opportunity to develop more partnerships. I thought that what we had done at Killcliff with the foundation was so unique and cool that it was like, well, why don't we replicate this? And I say that because, I mean, one, obviously there's an ability to raise money, which is unique through a company partnership like that. But it's a way that you can market what you're doing to new people, right? And do it through co-branded products or co-brand, services or whatever it may be. It's a way to really be creative, and that's what I like. That's kind of where I naturally fall. I think I just love coming up with creative solutions to things, creative ideas. At least I think they're creative. I don't know if other people do.
Yeah.
But I just love that idea too of like if you link up with an organization, now you've got the ability to talk to, like, let's just talk in social media terms, right? We formed a partnership with Reebok early on when I came in, and I knew some of the folks over there, but formed a partnership there, and that's worked amazing. It allows us as the foundation now the ability to talk to like all of Reebok's followers, right? Or they're going to talk to their followers about the partnership. And so we've done a ton with these different companies. I mean, we have kind of two categories. We have an official partner category, which is kind of, there's more involvement there. There's more of a commitment on their end. And then there's a proud supporter category, which can really run the gamut of any type of promotion. Like any company that wants to come to us and do like a small promotion, right, where they have a product and they want to give a percentage of proceeds or whatever, we're always open to those ideas. We just want to make sure that's done, again, the right way, that's done honorably and ethically and that kind of thing, right? It's not, I don't know what category it would fall into to not be that, but you probably think of a few. So like for example, Reebok, we did a co-branded shoe. We did a limited edition Nano. It was really cool, like co-designed it, tried to keep it really subtle with some of its design features, but there was a huge hit, right? And they can set these percentage of proceeds on this. It's designed co-branded with the Navy SEAL Foundation, and then a portion of proceeds is going to support our mission. I love stuff like that.
It's awesome.
Really cool.
Yeah, and I mean, the number of partnerships, it looks like a lot of these are fairly new, like the Go Ruck one and the Reebok one. These are ones that have since come about since you've become head of partnerships.
Right.
So it looks like a lot of these, obviously, just the nature of being a SEAL and it being such a demanding physical endeavor, right? And you being someone who's had such an experience with the CrossFit community, do you look a lot into the fitness and CrossFit world as a route to kind of build those partnerships?
I think part of that is like, look, coming from Killcliff, right? I already had a lot of relationships that were sort of in that arena, and that's kind of where I naturally fall. So a lot of that was just, those are kind of relationships I already had, right? Or companies were new, like Reebok. Fitvine was another one that came on, I think end of this year, beginning of this year. Those guys are amazing. They put out a special, they've got a limited, not limited edition really, but a varietal wine, Red Zinfandel, that they co-branded with us, that's killing it online, just doing awesome. So those guys are great. And so I think I kind of started there to a certain extent because those were relationships I had. But there's an alignment there in terms of better for you type products, right? Which makes sense, right? I think we want to the extent we can, we want sort of healthy, type things. Go Ruck as well, obviously. But that's not to say we couldn't do a partnership with car company or the sky's the limit really on what we could do, and I'd love to do those things. Luminox watches is another one that we brought on. Those guys, they've created, I think we're we've already done 2 kind of co-branded watches, but they're amazing, right? And they do a great job. And then there's synergy too amongst the partners, which I really like to do, right? If we can do sort of like bring a couple together and do some kind of promotion,
Sure.
that's sort of the rising tide lifts all boats type of idea. And I mean, again, just things that you can make to be like a win-win-win for everybody. That's where the magic is.
Well, mentioning GoRuck and actually the timing of this conversation seems to fit well with something you guys have coming up at the end of the month. I think it's October 29th. Big workout's going to be coming up, and Chad mentioned it earlier, but the workout is Chad. It's a hero workout within the CrossFit community. Can you speak a little bit about Chad Wilkinson himself as a person, what the workout is, and why this is something you guys are so kind of passionate about and something that you guys want the community to know about?
Sure. Yeah. Let me start with just just a little bit of more background, I think, on it, right?
Sure.
So I think people know that most of your listeners, I think, would know that the Chad workout was designed by Dave Castro. It's 1,000 step-ups on a box with a 45-pound plate or 45-pound ruck. So that's a challenge, right?
Very much.
And it's done to honor Chad Wilkinson, who died by suicide 2 years ago. And the kind of the event that GoRuck is now doing, they're doing it in conjunction with Sarah Wilkinson, Chad's wife. And it's, the shirts and the patches that they're selling in support of that, the proceeds are going to the foundation to support some of our brain and mental health programs. I think it's a really, really important topic to be talked about. It's one of those ones that it's tough to talk about it, right? It's tough for me to talk about it. It's not something that I get that's comfortable. It really isn't. But I think it's really, really important. And we need to kind of open up the conversation about this, right? So I'm really excited about what GoRuck and Sarah are doing here, and Sarah having the courage to kind of come forward with this and turn it into something that can be an awareness campaign, and hopefully something that we can raise money to really help try to fix the issue here too, right? Because the reality is we have way too many people that are taking their own lives. And I don't want to take anything away from, I'm very cognizant of, I don't want to take anything away from Sarah and her ability to communicate this. So I would highly encourage people to go on the GoRuck website and check out the link to the event. There's a video on there, and in fact, GoRuck posted it on their Instagram today. I don't know when this will air, so obviously there'll be a lag there. But October 15th, there's about a 7-minute video of Sarah really talking about Chad and talking about why she's doing this with GoRuck and why it's important. And she's going to do a much better job than I ever could of that. And it's more important too, right? For her, it is the personal story. But I think that the personal nature of it is important too, right? Like we hear stats like 22, right? People probably like the 22 push-up thing, right? 22 veterans a day.
Yeah.
Is suicide. And, but that's really impersonal, right? When it's just sort of a number like that, I think hearing the personal stories is really critical to this. And I think people don't realize the depth of the issue too, and why this is so important. I mean, I looked up some of these numbers because I didn't really know them, but since 9/11, our combat casualties, right? If you consider just casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan, is something like 6,700 people, something like that. Not all combat, but call it that, right? Something like that. The numbers I found in the same time frame, veteran suicide is at 108,000 people. Wow. Wow. But that's astounding to me, right? That is crazy. And just on a country level, right? We now have about 50,000 Americans every year that are committing suicide. And when we talk about something like opioids and the opioid epidemic that kills 50,000 people a year, right? That's like an epidemic that we're dealing with. And so I think we need to start thinking about it that way of like, what are we going to do to try to fix this problem? Because we can't have veterans, we can't have veterans, people coming back after serving this country and taking their own life if we can prevent it, right? So, I don't know what the exact solution is there. I don't know that it's the same for everybody either, right? But I think we really got to start bringing the awareness to people and start thinking about ways that we can actually try to solve the problem.
Yeah, I just really quickly, I think that's such an important point. Like, we like to do these hero workouts because they're hard and they're a tough workout, but the person behind the workout and the story behind the workout is really the important part of this whole thing. So listening to hear Chad's story, and not only from a bigger perspective that you're talking about of just mental health in general, this has just become such a topic that I think we need to address. And you're right. We need to talk about that as a real life problem more openly. And I think if we can do it through a workout, if we can do it through an individual like Chad and use him as an example to say, how can we approach this in a much stronger way? And whether that's through the foundation or through outside the CrossFit community, to be able to create more ways for people to be open about the struggles that come along with mental stress, whether that be through combat and coming back from that, or just the stresses that come along with daily life. I think being open about mental health is such an important step in the right direction, getting treatment for it. So I think this is a huge step, and I appreciate you mentioning that, but the workout is more important when you understand the reason why it's named after Chad. And
the other thing too is it's not just awareness, it's destigmatizing it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we have to have the ability for people to feel like they can talk about this when they have, mental issues or whatever it may be going on, right? Like I think these things are compounded by a lot of factors, and it's hard to say exactly what the cause, if there is a cause, right? Through just wear and tear or traumatic brain injury or PTSD or all of the above. But we need people to feel comfortable, like they can, right? In the same way that I was thinking about this the other day too, right? The same way now where if someone's an alcoholic, they feel like, I think, right, we've sort of destigmatized that to the point where it's like you can say, hey, let's get you help, right? Yeah. It's not like you're a bad person or something like that. And I think we need to be able to get to that same place with mental health, where it's not like you're not defective or broken. Yeah. Like let's really dig in and try to figure out what's going on here. Yeah, I hope, I'm very excited again about the event, about the, again, Sarah being willing to kind of come forward and tell her story and do this and promote it and everything. I hope it'll become an annual thing too, right? Like, I mean, I think this is, if there's an issue that we can talk about every Veterans Day until we've helped stem the tide here and fixed, like we should be talking about this problem, sure. Right? Like what else should we be talking about, right? So in the same way that Murph is like the Memorial Day workout at this point, I think if Chad was the Veterans Day workout, and we're using it to raise funds and awareness to help, then that again, I can't imagine a better scenario. So
yeah, definitely. And some of the things that Sarah said in that video, which hopefully everyone will go watch that and learn a little bit more about it. But I think that everyone has a little bit of a hard time asking for help, reaching out and asking for help. But one of the things that she said is that obviously stills are seen as heroes, and you guys do a lot of incredible things. And I can't imagine, being a man in that position and coming back and just feeling like, not wanting to reach out for help. I feel like there's an extra amount of hesitation to do so, right? And I think that's kind of what Sarah was indicating as well. So, from your perspective, being a SEAL, what do you feel like? What would it be that would potentially help you guys be more open, or help someone be more open to reaching out for help and being okay with asking for help in that way? Because she described it as a silent killer. It's something that the signs don't really show until it's a little bit too late. So, you know, the person is sitting here holding those feelings in. They're kind of putting on a show, so to speak, not showing what they're having trouble with. So is there anything that can be done? And, you know, I know you said that it's a little bit different for different people, but is there anything that is being done or can be done to assist with that specifically?
Well, I would say first, just from the foundation perspective, right? We want people to reach out to us, and that can be done privately, right? Like, you know, if someone's having an issue, we want people to reach out. We don't know with anybody out there if they're having problems unless we hear about it, right? So it's really important that they do that. I think the other thing too is like from what we're trying to do. One, we really want to try to get as smart as we can on the issue, right? So we do things like every year we host a thing called the Impact Forum in San Diego, which really dives into like what's the latest and greatest on this from a scientific community perspective, right? From a treatment perspective. But I think we also want to treat everybody as an individual, and realize it's not a cookie cutter solution, right? So I think we do our best to try to look at the needs of the individual. Like, what is it? Does someone need, and where do we start too, right? Does someone just need to talk to somebody to start? There's various programs out there, and there's great institutes that really deal with sort of TBI type issues or brain issues that we can send people to if that's needed. Sometimes it is like, you know, sometimes people do have like a substance abuse problem that has to be dealt with first as well, right? But it does take that step. I think in the sort of destigmatizing aspect of this, I think it's difficult when your problem is like between your ears, right? That seems like a much more insurmountable problem than, you know, I broke my arm, or you know, even I lost a leg or something, maybe, right? It's like, okay, that solution may seem kind of easy, where this solution, you know, between my ears seems a lot harder, right? It seems like maybe it's unsolvable, and it's hard because if the problem exists where you're trying to sort out the solution, right, that gets really tricky. But I think to be able to step back and say, no, like we can solve this, or like we can figure out what the problem is here, is kind of the part of that as well, right? Just having that ability to step back and say, like, you know, we can dig into this problem. So it's a problem that's got a solution or many solutions, just like any other problem. It might be tricky and challenging, but we can still do it, you know? And I think, anyway, let me stop there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I just keep thinking as well, the transitioning part of that has to be difficult. You mentioned when you got out in 2011 and you were trying to figure out what you were going to do. I mean, Dave and I can certainly relate to that with our backgrounds being elite athletes, and, you know, not comparing any deeper than that, but just training for, you know, the Olympics our entire life. And, you know, I've realized over the last couple of years that as a professional, I'm at least 12 years behind, you know, at least 12 years behind. So I'm 40 years old, and I'm looking at these, you know, 25-year-olds or 28-year-olds that are doing these incredible things professional wise. And they're incredibly good at what they do. And I'm sitting here like, oh man, you know, I was good at weightlifting, but that's about all I got, you know? So it's gotta be tough for you.
For what it's worth, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
I saw a special on, like, I don't know, on HBO or something about Olympic athletes, and it being very similar, right? Like,
weight of gold. Yeah,
I don't know. Do you know this thing I'm talking about? This special?
It's called the weight of gold. Yeah, it's very real situation. Yep.
Yeah, right. And I found that extremely impactful. So I think the point is, again, like this issue, kind of mental health, it's a nationwide, I mean, it's a worldwide thing, right? But it's something that, as we get more sort of high stress and more isolated now, especially with what we're dealing now, like this is something that we need to get out in front of, because this isn't just a, you know, high performance athlete or a special operations thing. I mean, it's everybody, right? And,
right.
I think that's why it's so critical. So I think that there's a lot of similarities there to things that you would have experienced, right?
Yeah, and absolutely. And speaking of transition on your guys' end, I mean, what does that look like typically for you guys? You fell into the CrossFit community and you started doing this. I mean, what types of programs, and does the NSF
Yeah, yeah.
help with that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's very much evolved, right? So there's a lot more available now than there was like 10 years ago, based on some of these needs. So the NSF does a lot to fund a whole bunch of different aspects of it. So one is kind of the physical piece of it, and even like sort of there's some cognitive stuff in there, sort of speech. I think it's called speech pathology. I think I'm getting that right. Where we have a program we send guys to that's really just about getting them kind of like physically sort of sorted out, right, so to speak, right? Like there's a lot of beating up that happens of your body, and it's sort of rehab's probably not the right word, but it's more like just physical performance, right?
Right.
Nutrition and balancing things out, and just kind of a little bit of like getting you tuned up as best as possible after spending a lot of times beating yourself up. There's a whole sort of professional aspect to it too, right? So like again, when I got out, I spent like 6 months trying to figure out what I was going to do and still couldn't figure it out. I think we do a much better job now of trying to get guys prepared. So there's something called the Honor Foundation, which is another nonprofit, but we fund the NSW aspect of that. We've been a big supporter of that. So one of the things we do, right, we have a small staff. We have less than 20 people on staff. So we rely very heavily on the help of ambassadors and extended, advisory board. And then realizing there's organizations out there that are already doing things that can fulfill a need we have for the community. So we can just fund that, right? Like, so, we, through a grant or whatever, we can support that. So Honor Foundation is one of those where it's sort of like, it's that kind of thing. It's more job focused, sort of professional transition from military to civilian. There's some other programs we fund that are like that as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot available now to hopefully set people up for success for that transition.
Yeah, awesome. And I want to go back to, you mentioned obviously next year is the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, and with what the foundation has been doing since then. And you mentioned earlier as well that certain things have changed along the way. Can you reflect on that just a little bit, on kind of where it all started and how it's different now?
Yeah, I mean, again, I've only been at the organization for a little over 2 years, right? So I unfortunately I don't have firsthand knowledge of a lot of this, but the basic history is it sort of grew out of the UDT SEAL Association, Virginia Beach. There was the need for kind of like, hey, like one scholarship, basically, the people that were there from the beginning. And our CEO, Robin King, has been there since the beginning, not as the CEO, but in the organization since the beginning. And it just kind of grew from there of like, hey, we need to fund more scholarships and helping people with this, and like, let's help them with this situation. It sort of came out of two organizations too. So there was one nonprofit, and then there was another one that was kind of started by some guys in New York City. They were trying to kind of raise money as well. Those two organizations came together in 2011 to form the actual Navy SEAL Foundation. So while the organization, the origins of it go back to 2000, the name itself, Navy SEAL Foundation, starts in 2011. And that coincides with the largest loss of life we've had in NSW with Extortion 17, the helicopter that was shot down in 2011. Really again stress the need for this type of organization. When you have that many 30 or so families that have now lost somebody inside the community, the need for an organization like ours really comes into light, right? So again, we're now at the point where we're I think I said before, but our operating budget is about $15 to $20 million annually. And we just try to stay abreast of what the needs are of the community, right? So, like I said, I don't. The programs that we have now will keep going as long as they're relevant and they're needed, and we'll add more, hopefully, as they're needed, and change ones that need to be changed. So, I mean, we always want to just be at the forefront of what the community needs from us.
Hey, Chris, do you mind if I ask you a little bit about your CrossFit background and just talk about this a little bit?
Sure, yeah, my really, really illustrious CrossFit background.
You've been pretty tied to the community for a while now, whether that be through Killcliff or through being an affiliate owner. But you said that, 2011, you had already been doing CrossFit down St. Thomas and started an affiliate down there with your wife. But how did you get into it? I mean, there was nobody else doing it down there. How did you and your wife actually start doing it in the first place?
Yeah, my wife started doing it before me. So she had a friend who was a CrossFit like seminar staff.
Okay.
And started doing it sort of after the birth of our second child. We had two boys pretty close together, right? So she hadn't really done any serious exercise in a couple of years, and she was getting back in shape, and that was what did it for her, right? Uh-huh. with her friend. And so she ended up going to a level 1 and getting we were over in Germany at the time, so she went one weekend and got a level 1. She came back and she's just like, oh my God, like so excited about it, right? Like, and I was still one of these people who was just like, yeah, whatever, I don't get it. It doesn't, like, how do you get a workout in 7 minutes, right? Like, you barely get your heart rate up. So I just didn't. To me, I'm a very like I need the data type of person, right? I'm very like, show me the data. And I was like, yeah, I don't, it doesn't make sense. Anyway, she signed me up to take a level 1 on the, like, right as I was getting out of the military. And so I went to this level 1 with no.
Oh, you hadn't done.
I mean, I knew a little bit, right? Like we did stuff like it was similar, but I really had no exposure to actual CrossFit. And I came away from that weekend like, okay, I get it now. I get, and that completely altered my thinking on fitness in general.
And what year was that? When you
2011.
2011. And then you went from Germany down to St. Thomas, and then eventually started an affiliate down there.
Yep. Yeah. And we built, I mean, like, the community down there is unbelievable. The gym's still there, right? We sold it in 2014, I think. But they've built it out. It's still rocking and rolling down there, but it's one of the most rewarding things I've done in my life, actually. It was just like going from basically nothing to a community of whatever it was. We had a lot of rotating people. There's like the island down there. You get a lot of people that come and then leave, and then so there's a lot of revolving doors. But there was like always like kind of a core group there too. And it was just awesome. Like, we were so tight down there. We did everything together. We had such a great time. I should say too, Chad, I have to tell you this story real quick. So, at some point I got exposed to you. There's a real famous kind of video of you, like, slow motion doing the lifts, right?
Yeah.
Probably seen. So my oldest son's name is Vaughn, his first name. And when we were down in St. Thomas, one of my friends had a Vaughn, Vaughn lifting shirt, something like that. So like Vaughn lifting. And so we have this picture of him holding up my son Vaughn, where it says Vaughn lifting, like, as a joke, right? And so anyway, just.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you remember that? Do you remember that person's name? I'm excited to hear that shirt way back then was.
Yeah, well, Eric Hamilton is the guy's name. So we competed together in the Latin America regionals back in 2012, which was a fun experience in and of itself.
I think we have a mutual friend in common, Connor Murphy. I hear that Connor was down there with you guys for a little while as well, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, no. So Connor was our first trainer. So
was he?
Yep. So Connor was on the island, kind of trying to do the same. Like, we didn't know him, right? Yeah. It was just a situation where we heard about this other guy that was on the island, kind of trying to do CrossFit-like stuff, and we had this. We got together at one point at a bar in the West End there in Red Hook, and we didn't like each other to begin with. Like, it was just one of these things, like, we were sort of eyeballing each other, and And just kind of a funny story. Like, I think we both didn't like one another the first time we met one another. And then, anyway, the next day a couple days later, whatever, we met up, and it was sort of one of these like, hey, this island isn't big enough for both of us kind of conversations. And so we're like, why don't you just come work with us? So that's what we did. And it was great. Like, Connor's amazing, and went on to work for Reebok. And so it was a great experience it's one of my best friends. So
Chad and I had spent some time with him in training grounds. We've done some stuff over the years with Reebok, helped some of the games athletes get ready for the games. And Connor was always in charge of facilitating the whole event and bringing us in, and just such a great dude. And when I heard that he was down there with you guys, I was like, oh yeah, we know him pretty well. He's such a great guy.
Yeah,
that's crazy to hear that you guys didn't like each other in the beginning. Both of you seem like such nice guys.
I don't know. It was one of those, right? We were at a bar, so whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, things don't come across exactly right.
For sure. And when someone tells me about them going to level 1 certification anywhere around 2010, that's when I went to my level 1 certification, was January 2010. And so it's like, it was a different time for CrossFit, right? I mean, things were different. Things were, I guess, I don't know the right word, but a little bit more unique. And certainly it was growing very rapidly, but a smaller community. So I wondered, do you remember your instructors, who those were back then?
So interestingly enough, Sarah Wilkinson was one of my.
Wow.
Sarah, she was one of my.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. That's when I met her. So it was I think it was CrossFit Hampton Roads, I think is right. And I'm drawing a blank on the owner's name, but anyway, Chuck Carswell was the flow master.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah and God, it's Nick. I think it's Nicole something.
Christensen?
No, that's not right. I can't remember. Chuck obviously, and I know Chuck pretty well at this point, right? Like, we would interact a lot during my kind of time at Killcliff at like the games and things like that. And he lived in Atlanta too, so I lived in Atlanta when I was at Killcliff, so we'd see him a lot. I can't remember the other instructors' names. I can't remember the other ones.
Well, that's wild that Sarah was one of your instructors. Crazy.
She's an L4 coach too, isn't she? She's one of the few L4 coaches that are out there, isn't she?
I actually don't know.
Yeah, I saw that on her profile. I thought she's one of the CrossFit L4 coaches, which is it's a hard status to get. So she's pretty tied into what's going on right now.
Yeah, right. Like, now that the standards now for those, like, that certification is really challenging. I mean, all my stuff's expired at this point, right? Like, I don't.
Are you still doing it now?
I wasn't gonna coach anymore, so it just I was a level 2 at one point.
Being that you're a former regional competitor, are you still doing CrossFit these days to kind of stay fit?
I do. I don't think I'll ever do anything different, really, right? Like, I think I'll always default to something that resembles CrossFit, whether that's at a gym or whatever. We have a gym here in town, Big Mountain CrossFit. We ended up building a pretty sweet home gym during coronavirus, which we weren't. It's sort of like on the garage project list. It got moved, like, bumped up to the top. Right?
Sure.
Coronavirus happened, so we built that out, which has got a rig and all that stuff. And then I do some swimming as well, just because I like to try to keep that skill up. And it's also, I will say, I'm now 45, and one thing I try to impress upon people like me that are very competitive and like to try to go in and beat 25-year-olds in the gym, and sometimes still do. Like, I have to be a little bit smarter about it.
Yeah.
Right. So I've stopped doing things like handstand push-ups. I don't do anymore. I just, I've got
you're breaking Dave's heart right
know,
now. You're breaking his heart.
I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with them, but like, for me, I've got some compression in my neck.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And, and when I saw that finally on an X-ray, where they're like, hey, you got some degenerative disc disease there.
Yeah.
I was like, I can just do presses with some dumbbells. I can get the same stimulus without hitting my smash my neck on the ground.
Yeah, being smart in those cases is definitely the right route to go at that point. And
so the biggest changes for me are some of those adjustments, and then I spend more time stretching now too. I just try to stretch, So at some point it's about longevity, right? I don't want to. I'm not trying to win anything.
That's all we teach. That's all we teach.
Is health and longevity.
I literally just want, if I can be as fit as I am now, 20 years from now, I'll be stoked.
How old are your kids now?
13, 12, and 8.
Are they getting into it as well a little bit?
Yeah. So my wife still coaches. She CrossFit Kids. She coaches. So she runs the local program here. And my oldest has now become kind of the helper, right? So he's sort of because he's too old really for CrossFit Kids. And then my younger two are in that. So yeah. And she was doing workouts at home with them. She's amazing. And so she's got the whiteboard in our garage, and she was doing workouts with them and like neighborhood kids during the summer when no one could go anywhere.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Right. They'd be running in and out of our garage, and they're doing all sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Love it. Well, Chris, I appreciate the time today. We're coming towards the end of the conversation. We always like to end it with a few additional last minute questions if you're up for them.
Sure. Are these should I have studied ahead on this?
No.
You ask the same ones to everybody?
Yeah, we do, but off the cuff is a good way to go with them.
Okay, damn, I feel like I should have. I listened to some of your podcasts. I didn't listen to it all the way through to know the rapid fire.
So this one we keep tabs on between me and Chad, and we have a little chart. And I think after hearing your handstand push-up answer, maybe I know the answer. But what sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics?
Oh, boy. Probably gymnastics.
Oh,
you got one. You got it.
Yeah. I mean, I like them. I like them both. That's a tough call because I don't consider myself good at either of them. Right? Like I can do them in the context of CrossFit, but not like a real weightlifter or a real gymnast, certainly. Right?
We got to get you out to our Power Monkey camp. I think you would love to
be
in Tennessee and hanging out with us.
Yeah, I know obviously a lot of people that have been to it. So
now, Dave, are you sure you want to do that? I think I might be able to change his mind.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I'll just show him the gymnastic stations and that's it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Next question for you. Any specific person you think would be great to have on the podcast? Anybody that comes to mind that you'd like to see us have on?
Gosh. I mean, there's a lot of, let me ask you this, like, is the focus kind of CrossFit or is it?
Not really. No. We like to think of kind of technique as a lot of our focus. So we have people from a lot of different areas, but fitness is kind of a starting point for us.
Got it.
Yeah, and it's not just movement. It's just anything in life that someone that's very detailed and technical with what they do, and it could be anything.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't have a specific personality in mind here, but I think sort of in the context of some of the things we've talked about. I think somebody that's really versed in the area of like meditation and mindfulness, if you haven't done that, would be super helpful.
Yeah,
absolutely. I like it.
Because that's something that's another piece of kind of my fitness, so to speak, that I've really tried to adopt and I think is super critical. Just being able to step back and examine your own thoughts for what they are, I just think is such a valuable skill these days. Probably always, but.
You start to appreciate it a little bit more as you get older, I think, too.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had done that a little more when I was
younger. Exactly.
For sure. All right. Well, kind of along those lines, too, what one book, movie, documentary, or TV series would you most recommend to our listeners?
So along those lines, the book that I've read recently that sort of talks about that is called The Happiness Hypothesis. Great book. Just kind of like, it's just tying together some sort of ancient and sort of time immemorial wisdom about what it means to be happy. And it talks a lot about just sort of your own mind as well. I thought it was really insightful. I will say too, just in terms of getting to the 20th anniversary of September 11th, I'm reading a book right now called Fall and Rise, which is the story of September 11th, sort of told as, it reads like a thriller novel, right? It reads, and it could be, right? Like that story of like hijacked planes and everything could be a fictional novel.
Right.
it's really great because, I mean, I got very emotional, I'm about halfway through it, but I've been getting very emotional because they're talking about the author, and I think his name is Mitchell Zukov, something like that. He talks about they're real people, right? Like, I don't think I could have named a single person that was killed on September 11th, right? But he tells a bunch of these stories and talks about what they were doing that day, whether they were in the towers or on the planes. It very much humanizes the story, and I think it's super powerful. And if we talk about never forgetting, right? You see that as a hashtag out there. Like, all right, well, what are you doing to never forget, right?
Right.
Like, how are you going to do that? So I think that's a way to do it, right? Like, remember those people, learn about them, who they were, right? So.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting for sure. I'll have to check that out. That's awesome. You know, I've been talking to you about the foundation and the workout, Chad, that's coming up. If folks want to get involved, where would you send them? And is there anything else coming up that you want them to know about?
So in terms of Navy SEAL Foundation, NavySealFoundation.org is our website. There's a ton of information on there about our history, who we support. There's links to donate. There's a monthly sit rep that goes out. People can sign up for, like a newsletter, which is just super packed with information about what we do, and events that are coming up. There's an event calendar on that. And typically we have a lot of events every year that has been much different in the age of coronavirus, but hopefully next year we'll get back to that. So, and there's everything from, gala type dinner sit down events to athletic events. And so, to that point, talked about things coming up. We will have a sort of proprietary race series type thing that's coming out soon, hopefully in 2021. May just be virtual to start. We'll kind of see how things shape up, but be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be really cool and a little bit different take on kind of your typical fitness type race type thing. So I think that's a great way for fitness minded people to get involved. And then in terms of Chad and GoRuck, the link is on our events page on our website, but goruck.com. The link is on the bottom, like in their footer right now. I think that's where you have to go to get to it. But it's got information about about Chad on there, about the workout. There's a training plan. There's that video from Sarah, which I highly recommend everybody watch. Again, it's on their Instagram as well. It's just like no other words can do a better job, right, than her speaking about this personally. And yeah, get involved with that. Please order a shirt and a patch and encourage other people to do it. I think the beauty of that workout is anybody can do it, literally, and just about anywhere, right? And the other thing I'll say on that is, please train if you're gonna do it, right? Like, that's nothing to be trifled with. Like, I've never done the workout, and I started training this week because if you go out and do 1,000 step-ups on a box with 45 pounds without having done it, like, you're not gonna be able to walk
for a while.
And I'm serious, right? Yeah. Like train for it or scale it or whatever, right? Like, that's not the point. The point is not, you don't have to just destroy yourself and do it RX, right? The point is, like, sort of like what else we're doing around it, right? So it's a way to kind of honor those that we've lost, but then how we can figure out how we can help moving forward too, right? So that's really the point.
Yeah, Sarah does a great job in the video really explaining that and saying, hey, it's not about, forcing yourself to do RX. If that's something that you can build up to and train for it, then do so. But, a big thing or a big recommendation I like is just, to take part, do it as a team, go one person on one side of the box and another one on the other side, and just kind of alternate, and you'll serve the purpose of what the workout is meant for, and the awareness and everything else. So, Chris, man, it was really great to meet you. Great to chat with you. Hopefully we'll see you again soon in the future.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
You guys.
Take care.
See ya.
Absolutely. And to our listeners out there, guys, as always, be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. Also check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content, at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Ollie Chad. And on behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your host. I'm Chad Vaughn with Dave Durante. And until next time, guys, thank you all for listening.